2023 three-point contest when she went off and set a record for NBA, WNBA?
Yeah, I did. I think
that game was, without question, the single worst basketball experience I have endured all season. Not just for the Indiana Fever, but for any professional team I have watched in recent memory. A performance so abysmal that it almost defies belief, and makes you question whether these athletes truly understood the magnitude of the opportunity in front of them. This was not a clash between two finely tuned, playoff-ready squads. This was not a battle between disciplined, well-coached units. This was instead a disjointed, sloppy, lethargic display that at times resembled a scrimmage between two uninspired, high school junior varsity teams more than it did a WNBA regular season game. And what makes it all the more frustrating is that the Fever's opponent, the AtlantaDream, were far from playing well themselves, putting up just 33 points in the first half, an anemic total in the modern game. Yet the Fever managed to mirror that same futility with 33 points of their own, missing a prime chance to seize control against an opponent that was clearly out of rhythm. Instead of pouncing on the Dream's offensive struggles, instead of showing the killer instinct that separates contenders from pretenders, the Fever fumbled the opportunity over and over again, looking hesitant, unfocused, and fundamentally unsound in ways that go beyond shooting variance or off nights. And what really adds salt to the wound is that Ryan Howard, Atlanta's primary scoring threat, had just 3 points on 1-for-8 shooting in the entire game's first half, an almost gift-trap situation for Indiana to take over. Yet they failed entirely to capitalize, exposing deeper issues that aren't about one player having a cold night, but about a team-wide inability to execute in moments that matter. Now, yes, there were numerous problems to point out. Kelsey Mitchell was nowhere near her usual scoring threat. Lexi Hull was completely ineffective, and Aaliyah Boston, though also quiet on the stat sheet, could hardly be blamed given that, without CaitlinClark on the floor, she was rarely getting the ball in advantageous positions. The pick-and-roll actions that normally free her up absent entirely, but the single largest, most glaring flaw that leaped off the screen was the interior defense, which was so porous and passive that it almost became comical in its predictability. Like watching a turnstile politely wave opposing players through possession after possession in the third quarter, where the game began truly slipping away for Indiana. The Fever allowed Atlanta to get uncontested drives and layups at the rim, seemingly at will. Not because the defenders weren't physically present in the paint, but because their presence meant nothing. They stood in position but offered no real resistance. No body contact, no disruption of rhythm, no shot contest that might at least force a tough finish, instead becoming the basketball equivalent of stationary cones in a dribbling drill. Their defensive stance little more than a visual obstacle rather than a physical one. And it's this lack of physicality, this failure to impose any real threat on an attacking player, that is fatal to a team's chances. Take one early possession of that third quarter. For example, Lisha Gray comes off a simple handoff, sees Aaliyah Boston right in front of her, and waltzes to the basket for an easy layup as if Boston were a cardboard cutout there only to mark spacing on the court. And this isn't an isolated breakdown. It's a recurring theme that has plagued Indiana all season but was magnified to an extreme in this game. It's not about schematics alone. It's about mindset. Good interior defense is as much about making the offensive player feel your presence as it is about perfect positioning. And the Fever simply don't project that force, letting their opponents treat the restricted area like a warm-up lane. The frustration compounds when you factor in the poor decision-making on offense. Moments like Natasha Howard catching the ball with a wide-open backdoor cut available to her, truly the kind of lane that, if you're a forward who likes running the floor, should feel irresistible, and instead of exploiting that opening, she hesitates, ignores the cut, and ultimately settles for a sidestep three-point attempt that is more contested than the one she had initially passed up. A baffling sequence that defies basketball logic and makes you wonder about the team's offensive priorities or the communication on the floor. It's one thing to miss shots, but it's another entirely to pass up the higher percentage looks you're gifted with and replace them with lower percentage, riskier attempts. And when you pile those habits on top of already leaky defense, you create a recipe for the kind of implosion we saw here. And speaking of missed shots, Kelsey Mitchell's night was emblematic of the Fever's struggles. 5 for 16 from the field, never finding a consistent rhythm, forcing looks that simply weren't falling, and when paired with Lexi Hull's complete absence on the scoreboard, a 0-point performance. The margin for victory without CaitlinClark shrinks to almost nothing, because if neither of your top perimeter scoring options outside of Clark can get going, you lose the pressure, valve that normally keeps defenses honest, and opens up opportunities for your bigs like Boston. It becomes even more glaring when you look at specific plays like a pick-and-roll possession where Sydney Colson, running point in Clark's absence, takes the driving lane that the play design typically reserves for Boston to cut into, would normally read the defense, go the opposite direction, and open up the lane for Boston. But instead, Colson drives right into the space Boston needs, effectively icing her out of the action and leaving her stranded without a roll on that possession. A small but telling example of how offensive cohesion drops without a true floor general orchestrating the game. The ball then ends up with Natasha Howard in the paint, who gets swarmed and can't make anything happen, before being swung to Lexi Hull for a wide-open 3, one of the few clean looks she had, but she misses, continuing a night where she simply could not find her shot. It all circles back to the same conclusion: without CaitlinClark, this Fever team needs at least one of Kelsey, Mitchell, or Lexi Hull to have a strong game. And when both disappear while Boston is cut off from her strengths, the team's offense becomes stagnant and predictable. Their defense provides no cushion, and what you end up with is exactly what we saw: a game where neither team looked remotely like a professional-level contender, where the Fever in particular not only failed to rise to the occasion but actively regressed into bad habits, poor execution, and low energy that makes you question whether they truly believe in the championship contender label that some have been quick to assign. And that's the larger, sobering reality here. If you can't take advantage of a struggling opponent, if you can't generate consistent effort on defense, if you can't make smart reads on offense, then all the preseason talk of contention becomes meaningless, because performances like this don't just lose you games, they erode confidence, they sap fan enthusiasm, and they make the conversation shift from "can this team win a title?" to "do they even deserve to be in the playoff picture?" And, until the Fever can show the kind of discipline, focus, and urgency that separates real threats from paper contenders, nights like this will remain a painful reminder of how far they still have to go.
Any advice you want to give her?
Yeah, I mean, just continue to work hard. Everybody starts at the same level of being a little.
I can turn this into a single, extended 7,000-word paragraph while keeping the same energy, flow, and emotional punch. And I'll also add some relevant context so it's not just a play-by-play rant but a deeper look at why these problems keep happening and how they connect to the Fever's larger identity crisis. The reality is that when you look at this game in isolation, it's tempting to think, okay, maybe it's just one bad night. But the truth is that what we saw here, especially in Kelsey Mitchell's performance, wasn't just a random statistical dip, it was a reversion to pre-CaitlinClark habits. The version of Kelsey where the offense stalls because she's asked to create out of isolation, pounding the ball, dribble ISO, working against set defenses rather than catching defenders on the move. And the uncomfortable truth is that she's never been her most efficient or dangerous in that mode. Her real brilliance has always been as an off-ball scorer, catching on the wing for a quick release 3, or cutting hard off a backdoor red when her defender's head turns. The kind of opportunities that Clark's vision and gravity generate constantly, and without that, we're seeing how limited the Fever's offensive structure becomes. How reliant it is on that catalyst to create flow. Yes, Mitchell is still a top-tier shotmaker in the WNBA. Yes, she's capable of hitting contested jumpers, but when you watch her in this game you see her driving into traffic without a plan, forcing looks that get easily swatted or rim out. And you realize she's not in rhythm, not in a groove, not in the spots where she thrives. That's why I can both criticize her for missing shots. She should hit as a professional and also acknowledge that the system right now is setting her up to fail without Clark drawing the help that frees her. It's the same with Aaliyah Boston and paper. Maybe the stat line suggests she was quiet, but the film tells you the defense had her circled in red from the first possession, collapsing every time she touched the ball, sending hard help the second she got position. And while there were moments, like when Erica McDonald actually tried to feed her in a favorable spot, those plays died quickly under swarming arms and hard doubles, especially from Brianna Jones, whose physicality forced turnovers or awkward kickouts. Boston can't single-handedly beat that kind of coverage without a perimeter threat pulling defenders away. And right now, without Clark, there is nobody else on the roster who commands that kind of respect or warps the defense in the same way. And then, as if the offensive struggles weren't enough, we have the issue that defined this loss and has become the Fever's most glaring weakness all season: atrocious interior defense. The kind that makes average opposing bigs look like prime Hall of Famers. The kind that turns every missed perimeter rotation into a layup line. And Natasha Howard, while a valuable player in other respects, is the face of that issue in this game, not because she's a bad athlete or clueless, but because her on-ball presence in the paint is so non-threatening, it might as well be invisible. She'll be standing in position, directly in front of the attacking player. But there's no contest, no body, no altered shot trajectory. Brianna Jones drives right in and lays it up as if she's in warm-ups. And it's the same story possession after possession. People keep telling me Howard's a good defender and maybe they're remembering her help rotations or her occasional perimeter switch stops. But on the interior, no. This is the nightmare stuff that lives rent-free in my head. The plays that make you shake your head in disbelief. Because you're watching a professional league where the rim protector is just there, but not there. And it's not just one breakdown. It's offensive rebounds where Jones misses the first putback, grabs it again over multiple Fever players, and scores on the second try. It's the repeated pattern where every skilled opposing big, no matter if it's Jones, Griner, Jonquil Jones, or even an average rotation post, suddenly looks like Shaquille O'Neal in his prime against this team. And that's not hyperbole. That's the consistent reality. The Fever's bigs get caught flat-footed, fail to box out, and their interior rotations lack urgency. So opponents get second and third chances right at the rim. The easiest points in basketball. Then you add in the perimeter blowbacks like Lexi Hull getting dusted off the dribble without the backline helping or rotating. And you realize this isn't just an interior size problem. It's a team-wide defensive communication issue.